For everyone in the room and anyone who's listening on the webinar, just let you guys know we're going to start in about 5 minutes. We're going to wait for everyone to kind of trickle in from lunchtime. Thank you.
Good afternoon and welcome to the August CDSS Exchange. My name is Michaela. I will be one of your presenters today along with my coworker Michael. Today we will be discussing the 2018 November statewide wildfires. I would like to first thank you for joining us during your lunchtime. I know that you could be doing several different things, but we appreciate that you are here today. So here on the slide, we just have a brief overview of our presentation today. First, we will be discussing CDSS and the responsibilities that they have in disaster emergency. We will give a brief overview of the Disaster Services Branch, followed by the 2018 November wildfires, and we will last discuss our two state volunteer programs, VEST and FAST. We do ask that you wait until the end of the presentation to ask any questions due to the short amount of time that we have. So CDSS responsibilities in disaster services. Before they were assigned any specific duties in emergency management, the state of California first deemed that it had the responsibility to protect the health and safety of their citizens from natural, man-made, or war-caused emergencies. In 1991, an executive order was issued to Cal OES, giving them the authority to assign emergency support functions. CDSS was given the role Emergency Support Function 6, which is mass care and shelter. So if you don't know what emergency support function is, California has 18. An example of one would be public health and medical. The lead state agency for public health and medical would be the Department of Public Health. So for us, we are 6, again, mass care and shelter. So the California State Emergency Plan, along with the Emergency Support Function 6 Annex, list and details our responsibilities.
As Michaela just discussed, CDSS's role is mass care and shelter. And just taking a quick little in-depth view of what that includes. As you can see, among the 6 activities in which we partake in, one I'd like to focus on is sheltering. So when a disaster strikes within a region and a county, counties will erect disaster centers in which evacuees will be able to reside if they have nowhere else to go. And what that means for CDSS is when the county has that request and for unmet needs, they'll send that up to the state, and that's where the state then begins to activate and begins to assist within the counties. For CDSS and sheltering, what that means for us is we will deploy out a mass care coordinator, which is for us in the form of an ESC or an emergency services coordinator who works with the county leaders as well as shelter managers in order to make sure that any unmet needs in the shelter are able to be streamlined up through the state, make sure those needs get filled immediately. The other thing we do in sheltering is send out trained staff to work as shelter staff. That can include any number of activities while out in the field. General duties generally in the shelter, which could include feeding, cooking, sorting of donations, anything along those sorts. The other thing I'd like to focus on is the coordination. Though CDSS is in charge of the mass care and shelter, we can't do it alone. We have to coordinate with multiple agencies, both federal, such as FEMA, state, we work with Cal OES and DGS, or Department of General Services, quite often, and nonprofit partners, such as Red Cross or Salvation Army. So the slide I have up for you is a very wonderful one. It highlights the different programs within CDSS pertaining to disaster work. The first one is mass care coordinators. Again, these for CDSS are in the forms of emergency services coordinators who deploy to the field during disaster times to work with county leaders and shelter managers to make sure any unmet needs in the shelters are met. Pre-disaster or post-disaster also, they will work with the counties in order to be prepared for disaster, which may include assisting with writing plans or procedures, as well as surveying shelters out in the counties for possible sheltering needs during a disaster. Because if we don't figure it out beforehand, we're not going to be able to figure out during. It's going to be way too difficult. So we always want to make sure we have these sites ready and available for those needs when that kicks off and it's going faster than you can believe. The next program is the Functional Assessment Service Team, or better known as the FAST program. FAST program is made up of more specialized volunteers who respond out into shelters during disaster time to do cot-by-cot assessments with those with access and functional needs in order to make sure anything they may have lost during their transition from their homes to the shelter or forgot of homes, those resources are able to be found and or acquired and given to those people in order to make sure they're as comfortable as can be in these trying situations. The next program is the Volunteer Emergency Services Team, better known as the VEST program. This is another program that trains volunteers in disaster shelter work, and they are then deployed during disaster time out to work in shelters. Again, as I discussed a little previously, the VEST members generally do more of the general shelter work, which could include sorting donations, cooking, cleaning, feeding, and sometimes it's even as simple as just speaking with people in the shelters, making sure all their needs are being met to the best of their capabilities. Now, before I go on to the next one, I would like some audience participation. How many of you are disaster volunteers technically? I got one hand. Okay, so fun fact, actually, technically you all are. As being a state employees, when you join in with the state, you signed a little piece of paper saying you could have the potential to be redirected during disaster time to work on that work. And this comes in the form of our Employee Redirect Program. During a disaster, if there are not enough volunteers coming forward in the programs that we already have pre-established, we still have to do our best to send people out to work in these shelters and make sure all those needs are being met. And what initially happens is CDSS, the director, will send out a blast to all CDSS employees. And you may have actually seen a few of these blasts come out last year during both disasters, the 2018 July fires and the 2018 November fires. And essentially, it's a request asking you to volunteer to deploy to these shelters with little or minimal training and assist where you can. And the last program is the State Supplemental Grant Program. This is a grant that is offered by CDSS to disaster survivors for up to $10,000 in applicable losses. There are applications for disaster survivors, and there is requirements that have to be met before we can offer that money, but that program does exist and is out there for disaster survivors. Going back.
So I will be discussing the other programs that CDSS offers. We do offer the TSA, Transitional Sheltering Assistance Program. This is a short-term lodging assistance program for survivors that do not have a place to go once the shelter closes down. So what we do is we partner with local hotels and motels to meet those housing needs. Another program that we offer is the Disaster Case Management. This is the partnering of a survivor with a case manager, and they basically implement a recovery plan to help transition that survivor into a normal day living. The next program, CalFresh, which becomes Disaster CalFresh when the president declares a disaster in the state of California. So this is essentially the food stamp program. The only difference between CalFresh and Disaster CalFresh is that there are no income requirements for the people that have been affected by the disaster. Next, the Emergency Food Assistance Program. This is a partnering with the United States Department of Food and Agriculture. So let's say, for example, a survivor is able to return to their home. Well, when they return to their home, they don't have any power, so therefore the food in the refrigerator has gone bad. They can possibly go to the grocery store, but the grocery store also had a power outage. So the EFAP program basically donates boxes of food to these individuals and households. And last, our translation and interpretation services are offered if they're requested in a shelter. So next, there are 4 cycles in disaster management. The first stage is preparedness. Recovery is the second stage. Oh, I apologize. Response is the second stage, followed by recovery and mitigation. CDSS, we typically operate in the first 3, preparedness, response, and recovery. So in the preparedness stage, this is typically our quiet time. This is where we are recruiting and we are training, we are promoting our state volunteer programs, our Vest and Fast. We want to make sure that we have a good amount of volunteers that are able to deploy if we are called upon from the county. Also, we attend mass cure trainings and exercises. I know for me personally, within my first month of joining DSB, I attended a tabletop exercise, and that included working with several other agencies and partners, and we did a simulation of a possible emergency that could occur in California. Next. The response stage. So this is when we hit the ground running. But again, I do want to point out that we only respond if we're called upon and requested from the county. So just because a disaster occurs, that doesn't mean CDSS or DSB, we do not automatically deploy. We only deploy if we're called upon from the county. So some of our action that we take is deploying our FAST and VEST members out into the shelters. If we don't have enough volunteers, we will do an employee redirect, as Michael mentioned. Also, if a disaster is declared by the president, Disaster CalFresh will be implemented. The community care licensing, let's say in the disaster area, there are CCL facilities. We will also be coordinating with them to make sure they're getting the resources and their needs met. And another important one that I want to point out is the Department Emergency Operations Center. So basically our floor is turned into a dock. We are no longer working on our day-to-day activities, but we're working on disaster-related activities.
And last but not least is recovery. Something I do want to point out, and it's a common misconception, is that recovery begins when response ends. That is not the case for us with CDSS here. Recovery begins the minute response begins. As soon as response begins and we're starting to send people out in the field, and we already know we're going to have these costs and this overhead and the X amount of population trying to receive some of the resources we have here, we're already preparing our funds here, our tracking programs, everything to be prepared for those to start coming in. We may be out in the response mode for months, but people who have lost their homes in the first week of the disaster, they're trying to find a way to get back to their daily lives immediately. We're not going to tell them, oh, well, we'll get to recovery in a few months when everything's settled down. No, we are there and we're ready as soon as stuff starts kicking off. And with that, some of our programs, and we have discussed it already briefly in some earlier slides, we have the State Supplemental Grant Program, which again is that $10,000 grant offered by CDSS for applicable losses. Again, another one we discussed is the TSA, or Transitional Sheltering Assistance Program. When people are moving out of the shelters, but they have nowhere to go, their homes have been destroyed, or their homes and their families, or everyone's they know potentially may have lost their homes, they're able to stay within motels and hotels in the area in order to next figure out their game plan on where to go next. And last, we have the Disaster Case Management Program, which again is working with the county and CDSS as a whole in trying to meet with every individual person or family who was affected by the disaster, and make sure we have a game plan and for them moving forward so they can get back to their daily routine and everyday lives. And we also have the Recovery Support Function 6, which we will not be going into detail about today. And technical errors. Okay. The next slide I have for you is one that I personally love. And it is just showing some of the logos of some of the stakeholders that we coordinate with, not only during disaster time, but pre-disaster as well, and post-disaster. Some of them you may recognize: FEMA, Department of General Services, Cal OES. All are, not all, but a good list of our state and federal partners. On the right-hand side, however, some people who may not get the same amount of face is American Red Cross, Salvation Army, World Central Kitchen, and Southern Baptist Convention, just to show that we do not just exclusively work with other state and federal agencies, but we do work with nonprofits as well. And because the total goal here is to make sure these disaster survivors are getting all the resources that are available to them.
So next, we're going to enter into the next talking point, which is giving a brief overview of the Disaster Services Branch. So it is our mission to serve, aid, and assist individuals and families affected by disasters and emergencies by providing excellent response and recovery services. So some of our prominent programs in DSB, as we mentioned earlier, our VEST program and our FAST program. These are our two state volunteer programs. We also have the SSGP, the State Supplemental Grant Program, which can award up to $10,000 to families. Disaster Case Management, again, that's that pairing a survivor with a case manager and implementing a recovery plan. Transitional Sheltering Assistance, and also we do mass care and shelter operation and catastrophic planning.
The slide we have right here is a great visual representation. First, I'd like to point out, obviously, map of California. And in the map of California has been broken down into 6 separate regions. And you may be thinking, well, who came in and decided these were the regions? Well, CDSS decided to mimic or copy many of the other agencies' regional map in order to make sure that when we're talking and working with other agencies, we'd all be on the same page on what we're talking about. And for an example of that, Cal OES, Cal Fire, Law, they all share the same map with these same regional breakdowns. Now, we assign a emergency services coordinator working as a mass care coordinator to one to each individual region. For example, Tara Heller, as you can see here, may be assigned or is assigned to work with Region 6, which includes all the counties you can see down here in this orange. I know it's a little hard to read what counties those are, but we have ones such as San Diego, San Bernardino, thank you. It's hard for me to read down here as well, or up here. And these mass care coordinators or emergency service coordinators, again, work with the counties pre-disaster and responding out to different counties within their entire regions in order to assist in surveying possible shelters and working on possible plans for disaster time. And again, during disaster, mass care coordinators or emergency service coordinators may be requested to respond out into the field, but that doesn't happen initially. The counties will erect the shelters, and if they're unable to fill their needs, they may reach out to some of the surrounding counties near them in order for requesting mutual aid, essentially. And if the counties they're requesting mutual aid from either don't have the capabilities to assist, or they do assist and there's still unmet needs, that's when the request to the state then comes through, and state will then begin assisting them with whatever unmet needs they may find they have. And it is one of the duties of the emergency service coordinators being out in the field to assist in streamlining those requests up through all the way to the SOC, or the State Operations Center, to make sure nothing gets lost in translation. So the next 3 slides I'm going to discuss with you are ones, again, I know I keep saying I love these slides. Well, it's because I do love all the slides, but the next 3 I'm going to discuss are pretty exciting for myself and Michaela and those in the disaster services. In 2015, this is what the Disaster Services Bureau looked like. There were 9 positions that incorporated not all the programs that we discussed today. Now, moving forward to 3 years in the future, time travel, we hit the 2018 Disaster Services Bureau organizational chart. As you can see, we grew from only 9 positions to about 15 within just a short 3 years. And part of this reason being some of the noticeable gaps that were found, as well as many of these programs that we've discussed today weren't even in existence 3 years ago, or 4 years ago now in 2015. And slowly, as we found those unmet needs and we've begun to fill them and create new programs, it's required more staff to come in to assist. And that brings me to my favorite slide, the 2019 Disaster Services Branch Organizational Chart in all of its glory. So from just 2018 to 2019, we have had the opportunity to grow in adding another 20 positions to our group. Now, not all those positions have been filled yet, and actually we're currently doing interviews and hiring to fill many of these positions as we speak. One thing I do want to point out, and you guys may be sitting out there thinking, they don't know what they're talking about. They keep saying bureau, they keep saying branch. What are they talking about? Well, there's a reason for that. The reason being, starting July 1st, 2019, we were approved to be a branch. Now, with that being said, we haven't filled all the necessary positions in order for that structure to be set up. And there's still some logistics being figured out. So as of right now, we are acting as a bureau, not a branch, but we are looking forward and very excited to move up.
Okay, so here we have a timeline of the recent disasters within the past 2 years. And so as Michael stated, the DSB has grown significantly within the past couple of years, but this is also due to the fact that California has experienced a lot of emergencies and disasters within the state. So these are some of our responses from 2017 up until 2018. So first in October, we experienced the Oroville Dam spillway crisis, followed by the Sonoma and Napa fires. And next, if we go down to July 2018, Shasta wildfires occurred. Then in October, the San Diego asylee influx. And then, of course, in November 2018, the state of California had 3 fires, Camp, Woolsey, and Hill Fire. So now we will be discussing the November 2018 statewide fires. I personally like this slide because it shows where Camp Fire started, which was in Northern California in Butte County. And if you look down at Southern California, Hill Fire and the Woolsey Fire, that occurred in Ventura County. But also, there were other fires going on in the state as well. So literally, California was on fire in November. On November 8, 2018, fires erupted in both Northern and Southern California, again in Butte County and Ventura County. On November 12, 2018, the president declared a national disaster in the state of California. So just a little bit about the Camp Fire. This was the most deadliest and destructive fire in the state of California. There was a total of 86 fatalities. Approximately 18,793 structures were destroyed. Of those, 14,000 were homes. And approximately 153 acres were burned as well. And if I just give a little history about Butte County, the poverty levels are higher than the California state average and higher than the United States average. Also, the elderly population, which we looked up was 65 years and older, is higher than the California state average and the United States average as well. So the Woolsey and the Hill Fire. In Woolsey, there were a total of 3 fatalities, 1,600 structures were destroyed, and approximately 97,000 acres burned. In the Hill Fire, there were no fatalities. There were 4 structures destroyed and approximately 4,500 acres burned. Now, when you're looking at the numbers in the Woolsey and Hill Fire in comparison to the Camp Fire, of course, they're smaller, but it's important to note.
Shield all your eyes from the future slides.
Okay, so these 2 fires in Southern California, they cut off transportation and highway routes. And also in Southern California is a heavily populated area. So this is why the president also declared a national disaster, a state disaster in California.
Now, I know you're thinking, and we were thinking the same thing. So we even put the title of the slide, why the San Diego influx? Am I going to discuss that? Aren't we talking about the 2018 November fires? Well, yes, we are. But we did just want to take the time to recognize the amount of time and effort that not only CDSS put in, but as well as all of its volunteers to respond to the San Diego asylum influx. Now, in late October 2018, a large group of migrant asylum seekers were attempting to come into the United States through the San Diego border. Now, this was a very unprecedented situation, not only for the state, but CDSS as well, with such a high amount of people coming through, not knowing realistically where they were going to go. CDSS responded down and assisted San Diego in opening up shelters for the asylum seekers to come in, and essentially transitional sheltering. They weren't doing long-term stays. They were coming through to get their basic human needs met, food, water, even just clothing and shoes that were donated, and essentially sending them on their way. Most of them, not all, but most of them had somewhere else they were heading on going. San Diego was not the final destination. And the other nice part about highlighting this event is the fact that, as I said, this was happening simultaneously to the 2018 November statewide wildfire. All the resources that we would normally put in towards the disaster, funds, staff, personnel, volunteers, were all being split between the fire response as well as the San Diego response, which made it a much more difficult time for CDSS in order to find the amount of staff that we needed in order to make everything operational. Luckily, we did do it, and we're all here today, but it did make for a much more challenging situation. But it also alerted us to the fact that in our jobs, we have to be prepared and ready for the unexpected. Nothing's ever going to happen the way we want it to. Now, to put a bit of a visual representation on what I just discussed, I do have this graph for you, and it's quite wonderful, actually. So we have here the broken down between the Camp Fire, the Hill and Woolsey Fire, and then San Diego asylum influx. As you can see, staff deployed to the fires was 15. Now, if you remember my chart from a little earlier ago, we only had 15 DSP staff. So everyone in DSP was working on the fires, and 11 of those 15 were doing split efforts. They were not only working on the fires, but they were also working for efforts for the San Diego asylum influx. And the same numbers can be represented down here. We had our VEST members and our redirect numbers for both the fires as well as the San Diego asylum influx. Something I do want to highlight about these numbers, same to the DSP staff deployed, those numbers are double. Some of those numbers are doubled. Some people of our wonderful, wonderful volunteers, who I cannot thank enough, responded out to things such as the fires for about 2 weeks, would come home for a couple of days, pet their turtles. I don't know what employees have, but turn around and would deploy out for another 2 weeks or plus to San Diego, and with that very quick turnaround, which makes it, again, much more difficult because we're burning out on resources and supplies as well as personnel. I do want to highlight programs utilized. For the 2018 November fires, we did utilize the SSGP and TSA, and we wanted to just give those programs some numbers on face. The SSGP rounded out to approximately $8.4 million. We are still getting calls from disaster survivors requesting information on the SSGP grant. And so that's number can fluctuate. We're just over 900,000 in transitional sheltering assistance program. And our DSNAP through Disaster Cal Fresh is at approximately $1.6 million. So if just those financial numbers, if anything, can put just a little bit of a face on how large these disasters were in just the course of 3-4 months.
So a little bit about VEST, our Volunteer Emergency Services Team. This is, again, a volunteer state program. You must work for the state of California in order to join VEST. VEST, you are temporarily reassigned to work in either a shelter or either at our disaster recovery centers. You can have numerous responsibilities, from as simple as doing a head count in a shelter to organizing supplies. But I really want to encourage everyone to participate and to join our VEST program. This is a time where we can come back and give back to our community and to everyone to people that have lost everything. I would like to think about if I was placed in a situation where I lost my home and I didn't have anything. I would like for a community to come together and to volunteer. So again, this is just a little overview about our VEST program. And next, we'll be talking about
So as I know you've heard it already, the FAST program, but the reason why we keep bringing it up is because it's such an essential function of CDSS and the disaster services. The reason being is the shelters are not inclusive. Everyone from every walk of life can end up in a shelter, and it's our jobs to make sure that all their basic human needs are being met. So as I discussed, FAST, standing for Functional Assessment Service Team, deploys out to a shelter during disaster time. They do cot by cot assessments to find any unmet needs with anyone with access and functional needs. Now, when you're running out of your home, you got a minute or less to grab everything in your entire house that you think is important and head to a shelter, with the potential of knowing everything that you've accumulated your entire life is about potentially going to be destroyed. It's life or death. You're not worrying about grabbing this, grabbing that. You're just trying to get out, hopefully with your life. Now, when this comes down to those with access and functional needs, they may forget to grab something. It could be emergency oxygen. It could be a wheelchair. It could be a walker, a cane. It doesn't matter. But those are things that people need in order to feel secure and comfortable within shelter. Or it may honestly be a life affecting situation. Someone's on emergency oxygen. They can't sit there, especially in a fire disaster with this smoke, and not have that. And so it's up to our FAST teams to assess what those unmet needs are and assist in acquiring those different things for those people. The other difference between the FAST and the VEST program, other than just the shelter functions, is the FAST team generally does have a more specialized training. It is a little bit longer than our VEST program, and there are some prerequisites, but we're not going to get into those today. I do want to point out and highlight, after talking about VEST and FAST, back to our previous slide here, which is this one. These numbers here, we have our redirect population, which was 54 and 75 between the two, and our VEST numbers, 25 and 41. In a perfect world, we would love to have our redirect numbers be 0 and have every single one of those people bumped up and being either a VEST member or a FAST member. The reason being is redirects, you don't get any training. You come in, you say, here's where you're going, here's what you look forward to, good luck. Whereas with the other two programs, you do get that training. And so we're just stressing, if you ever think this might be something you'd ever be interested in deploying for during a disaster time and going out working in shelters, please feel free to reach out to Michaela or myself in getting a little bit more information or potentially signing up for either one of these programs. Now, what we're gonna watch next are a couple videos of our volunteers who actually responded to the 2018 November statewide wildfires. They're just gonna briefly discuss a little bit of what they saw and some of their experiences while out in the field. All right, we have just one more video of another volunteer. So with no further ado, that will conclude our speaking portion and our presentation portion of the August CDSS exchange. We will leave the remainder of the time open for any questions you might have for either myself or Michaela. And we do ask that if any of you are interested in either of our programs, either VEST or FAST, please come see us when this is all done. And we do have some brochures for you with just a little bit more information regarding those two programs. Or you can always feel free to reach out to us as well, either via email or phone call. It doesn't matter. We'd just love to talk to you, especially if you're interested. Or if you have any coworkers who you think may be interested, please send them our way. Thank you so much.
If you guys do have any questions for our presenters, just go ahead and use this microphone because the people on the webinar can hear you that way.
I always think that my voice sounds weird when I hear it, so I'm probably going to think that it sounds weird on the speaker. No, that's not my question.
Oh, it does.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. I appreciate that. So in regards to the org chart with DSP turning into a branch rather than a bureau, is it still going to be under the admin division, or is there going to be, is that going to be a swap out?
I will refer that question to Kyle Weber, our current branch chief.
All right.
As of right now, there is a proposed reorg, that's an executive reorg going on. But as of right now, that the with disasters, I guess, sort of breaking off. That's the kind of I feel like I'm the president in December, right? Because the new president was elected in November, and I just have a month left of lame duck branch chiefshipness or whatever. But yes, it will be, as of right now, it will still be under admin, but I know there's some reorg that's going to be going on. So I do believe it's going to probably be reporting by itself to the executives.
Thank you, Kyle.
Anyone else? Well, I want to thank our presenters. Everybody give another round of applause to Michaela and Michael. And for those of you tuning in via webinar, we want to thank you for tuning in again. We do these every month, once again, so just stay tuned to the DSS calendar and look for notices in your inbox. We'll keep you apprised of any more presentations coming up. Thank you.